Welcome to Tell Me a Story Season 2. My name's Adina Samuels, and I'm inviting anyone and everyone to share their stories with me. Let's see what we get. What's in a name? Shakespeare may have asked the question first, but the answer is still a little unclear. Antonio Carvalho and I sit down today to talk about the value of names and the importance they hold in carrying parts of our identity. He shares how he introduced himself to different people in different ways at various points in his life, and how the name that he carries with him and future generations impacts his own story as he continues to tell it. This is a touching one, and there's a lot more to come here, so listen in. Antonio, welcome to Tell Me a Story. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Adina, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'd love it if you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. My name is Antonio Carvalho, and I am a young professional who's written a book about a young man with an identity crisis who's eventually found himself.
I love it. I'm excited to hear kind of a little bit more about the process of writing, having to kind of identify aspects of yourself in a reflective manner. I think it's really amazing that you've taken the time to actually write the book as opposed to just letting thoughts kind of swirl in your head as most of
Sure.
us do. So
Sure.
fantastic. Well, Antonio, you know how this works. The show's called Tell Me a Story for a reason.
Sure. I mean, where do you want to start really is the question. But um, if you want to start with my story, we can start many different parts of my life. But and I say that as someone who's not even 40 years old yet. But my story sort of starts as a young Torontonian who, or a Torontonian boy of teenage parents, raised by a single father who sort of was trying to figure himself out and who he is over the years. Reality is I grew up in different neighborhoods. I have family from different parts of the world. So it was always sort of difficult to figure out who I was, who was Antonio. I mean, I didn't even go by Antonio when I was growing up. I went by my first name, which is Juan. So sort of a weird name for some people. It's super common in the Spanish speaking community, but for those who don't speak Spanish, it could be Juan, Juan. So I sort of changed to using Antonio later in high school life.
Well, let's talk about that then, because I feel like your
Sure.
name is fairly closely tied to your identity. It's kind of a big thing to change your name. Tell me, why was Juan where you started? Where did that name come from?
Yeah, Juan actually, story has it, rumor has it, the myth is, I'm not 100% sure, but from family members, I've been told that it's my dad's cousin growing up. It was his favorite cousin growing up in Argentina. I actually had the pleasure of meeting him and spending time with him. I'm actually still friends with my dad's cousin's daughter, who would be my second or third cousin. I don't know how to explain it, but his name is Juan Antonio as well. So that's sort of where I got the name. It was his favorite cousin growing up. My dad moved, I believe, to Canada when he was 9 or 10. So he had a very short time in Argentina.
And you were born in Toronto, correct?
Yeah, I was born in Toronto, born and raised. I now live in Melbourne, by the way, but Australia. But yeah, I was born in Toronto, May 2nd, 1988.
And do you know anything about why your parents chose the name aside from it being potentially your dad's cousin?
I think my mom wanted to leave it to my father, especially having a boy. A lot of times the fathers try to have a little bit more input on the name. So she sort of left it to him and he decided on that. So technically I don't even have a middle name. It's just a hyphenated first name.
It's Juan dash Antonio Carvalho.
That's right. Yeah. Juan
Huh.
Antonio.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Super baseball player sounding / soccer
A
player
reference
sounding.
I don't get, maybe. I don't know.
Well, if you ever watch baseball, I'm not a big baseball fan, but most of the players are from, or a lot of the star players are from the Dominican or Cuba or Puerto Rico, and very Spanish speaking names.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you went through your life as Juan until about high school. What made
Yeah.
you transition?
The truth is, going through the sort of identity crisis my whole life, being of many different cultures and in different neighborhoods of different cultures. By the time I was in high school, I started sort of going down the wrong path, and I knew that I needed to switch schools. My grades were sort of lacking. I was slacking off. Um, it didn't help me by switching schools, but I sort of wanted to create a fresh identity in a way. People knew where I was from. People knew I was, who I was friends with, my circle, but I wanted to sort of start fresh. And so I started using Antonio. But also, to be fair, at the time, my grandmother's husband, um, his name was Juan. I also had a friend named Juan, and there was a guy in my neighborhood named Juan. So it was just a little bit
Too
too
many,
common.
too
Yeah,
many cooks in the
it's the
kitchen.
it's the equivalent of John. So
Yeah,
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 yeah. Growing up, I had a friend named Adina in my grade. We were both
yeah.
July babies, and
There
I've
you go.
always kind of resented her a little bit. Like, that's my
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
When you say identity crisis, can you tell
Sure.
me a little bit more about that? Like, what were you grappling with so young?
Uh, I would say many different things. I had my parents weren't married, but they they split when I was very young. So I came from a split home already. Um, my mother is Canadian, so I'm second generation on my mother's side. She's Canadian, but of Jamaican ancestry. And then my father is born in Argentina, but of different ancestry as well, but mainly Latin America. So I'm first generation on his side. So culturally super different compared to the neighborhood I grew up in, which was very Italian, Portuguese, and some Caribbean. But, I didn't fit in quite with every single one of those groups. So I try to find my way there. But things really change in high school. I mean, when you're very young, you don't really see culture, race, or religion so much. You start noticing a little bit more when you're older, and you start kind of you're attracted to groups, based on different identities. So in high school, I would say I was more aware that I was a bit different than some of the people that I went to school with. So that's
Well,
something I
how did
struggled
that
with.
come about?
Um, Good question. And I would say it starts with, language is different at home. Although I didn't grow up speaking Spanish, I was very influenced by the sort of Argentinian culture. But, truthfully speaking, you look at me, I'm a very rare Argentinian the way that I look. People are usually lighter or fair skinned. There are people that look like me closer to Brazil, but um, it's not common you see someone like me. So I don't sound like what I am, if that makes sense. I don't look like what I am, if that makes sense as well. So yeah, I kind of struggled in that sense where I was trying to be something that I wasn't. In order to fit in. And what I mean by that is sort of adopting some of the cultural aspects or cultural commonalities of people around me as opposed to what was actually my upbringing.
And the people around you, how would you describe them at that point?
I would describe them in different ways. Some people were going down the wrong path and continue to do so. I would say more, and we're talking about in high school, sort of the underworld, what I would call it, robberies, drugs, sort of a gang culture. That's sort of what was around me, even though the reality is I didn't actually grow up in that. It's just I was near it or I went to school with it. And I sort of adopted that to, in a sense, survive. I didn't want to be bullied. I didn't want to feel so different. And the truth is, I actually enjoyed those people. I built relationships with those people.
Was that post name change or pre name change that you were kind of involved with that group?
I would say it was around the same time of name change. So when I started getting myself involved with those things is when the name change came. Like I said, I went from Juan, the Spanish kid that people would say, the Spanish kid who played trumpet, was very good at music. My grades were pretty good. Um, I excelled in certain things except for math, um, especially in the arts. And by the time I did that name change is when even my arts capabilities weren't being showcased, and I wasn't taking it seriously anymore.
So Antonio represented this maybe like tougher guy, this guy who
Absolutely.
doesn't care about, you know, grades
Absolutely.
or, you know,
Yes.
university upcoming or all of that kind of
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
Interesting,
I
interesting.
was the sort of, I came from I was essentially the middle class, lower middle class, multicultural sort of nerd, crybaby, if you will, because I was a pretty emotional kid, to sort of a tough guy, um, or wannabe tough guy, around tough guys, sort of into the into the illegal things that I shouldn't have been involved with.
And did you feel like owning the name Antonio helped you play into that kind of character better? Like did your crowd respond to that better? Like, oh, it's not Juan, it's Antonio.
I think by the time that I had switched schools, changed, or started using my second portion of my name, um, I don't even know that many people knew about me being Juan. The only people that did
Mm,
were those that went to my old school or my neighborhood, and they weren't really involved in a lot of the things that I was involved with. So when they would see me in the street, they may call me Juan. Um, I would acknowledge them, but it's as if we lived in two different worlds at that point.
interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of your story has to do with different facets of your identity, kind of reconciling a lot of different aspects of it, and then your name being just one.
Yes.
Um, I want to go back to that time when you were embracing this new you. Um, but I'm just curious now. Now you still go
Mhm.
by Antonio, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, despite, I mean, if I may say so, I don't really see you as like a tough breaker, you
Sure,
know.
sure, 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 sure.
How come you stuck with that?
I stuck with it because uh, I've I've accepted that my experiences in life are those exactly their experiences, and there's things that I can't go back in time. I can only set my path going forward, right? I can only achieve things going forward, not in the past. So, by me changing my name again or going back to something, um, for me, it's sort of a way of pretending like something didn't happen, and I like to embrace my experience. It's made me who I am today. It's molded myself, and it's despite the negative parts of my life, they do play a role in who I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't run from yourself, I guess.
Yeah, you can't run from the past. You can try to forget it, but it'll show up.
So, in that case, if we're not running from the past,
Sure.
take me back to, let's say, 10th grade
hmm
Antonio. What were you getting up to? Please.
10th grade Antonio. So I went to a school called Oakwood Collegiate. Um, yeah, I was still a decent student. And what I meant by that, wasn't really getting into trouble at the time. Um, I came to Oakwood knowing a few people because I went to a middle school. See, when I was in middle school, I was at Carlton Village. And at Carlton Village, it was a similar situation as when I was in Oakwood. At Carlton Village, I was, again, that sort of middle class, lower middle class kid going into a sort of underprivileged school, trying to figure himself out. I was not from the same neighborhood, um, but close by. And a teacher had noticed that I had talent, whether it was in music. I was a pretty good student. And again, I was finding myself with those who would either take me into the wrong places or already were in the wrong places themselves. Um, Miss Khan had suggested to my father that I leave or that he switch me or move me from that school. So my dad ended up pulling me out of the school after my first year, after grade 7. And in grade 8, I went to Kane Middle School. So I had to, again, make new friends in a new environment and sort of figure myself out again there. And I found that I sort of struggled there in a sense where um, I didn't fit in, but I sort of stayed under the radar there. So I wasn't really bullied, but I wasn't really somebody there. And I decided for high school not to go to what they had, George Harvey, which was another high school nearby. My parents actually went there. Didn't have the greatest reputation. And then there was York Memorial. Those were the two schools that everyone was going to. And I decided that I was going to go to Oakwood because I knew some people that went to Carlton Village that I can reconnect with, and I'd have a friendship or have a friend group there. Um, what ended up happening is that friend group I kept until maybe grade 10. And by grade 10, I was already looking at how to um, be more, I don't want to say accepted, but I guess accepted by those who were cool, or the basketball players. It was a very sports focused institution. But what I found even with that is I wasn't a sporty kid. I was, like I said, I was sort of what people call a nerd or a band camp kid. Um, but at the time, my father and my stepmother weren't getting along too well, and I was sort of on my own and trying to, like I said, figure myself out. And I ended up befriending people who were from areas where things like drug dealing were happening and money was being made, and I found that really cool. And it wasn't something that was related to sport. And over that summer, I started, hanging out in different neighborhoods that were not too far from me, um, but weren't necessarily my neighborhoods, and getting involved with things that I shouldn't have been. So that was sort of the transition, was in grade 10. And I would say from grade 10 to grade 11, by summertime, that transition had already happened. So from
So
me going
Miss
from Juan to
Khan's
Antonio.
uh
Yeah.
Miss Khan's efforts to protect you or kind
Yes.
of steer you in the right direction
Yes.
um weren't so successful, I guess.
I would say they were probably successful in a way, but it was temporary. So
Yeah.
it saved me for another year
And then you found yourself kind of hanging out with the same kind of crowd
when I went.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually.
Hmm.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were fully Antonio, I'm just imagining, roaming the streets with your friends and I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
um, were you thinking about Juan at all and who you kind of used to be?
At that time, no. I mean, at that time, I was more so focused on, I was more driven by, I would say, I was driven by the excitement of that world, late nights, um, having a group around you. It felt like people say it's a sort of a meme, but to say, but like these are sort of like a fraternity in a sense. That's what it felt like. Like I had brothers who let me stay at their place, brothers who, if anything happened, they would have my back. It's funny because there's this girl that I went to school with in high school that we didn't really get along. And one day she saw me in the street on Eglinton, with the boys, or with the mandem, as people say. And we were causing ruckus. Something was going on. And she yelled at me and she's like, you know, you're just Juan. You're just a trumpet player. And I looked at her and died of laughter. But I was so in a state of like no care that I just laughed it off and walked away from her, and always made fun of her every time I saw her. It was very cruel to her. But I was not a good person by that time. That's what I would say. I went from the sort of soft spoken, nice guy, sort of crybaby, I would say, trumpet playing kid, to sort of a street kid.
Hmm. Uh, she was kind of onto something there by pointing that out. Like, I think
Yeah,
it must have been kind of brave of her to even confront you and, with your posse at that point.
for
But
sure. No, for sure.
there's
For
something
sure.
like we kind of talked about. You can't outrun your past. You are
Exactly.
the trumpet playing little kid, and you are
for sure.
the guy who got involved with this other group of people, and
Yeah,
all of it is true. I think,
absolutely.
yeah, I think she was wise beyond her years.
Yeah, look, if had we could also always say shoulda, woulda, coulda. Had I stayed that trumpet playing kid, maybe I would have been in a better place, or a different place, I should say. I would for sure be in a different place, but a better place, who knows? But we can't turn back the hands of time. These are lessons learned. And for me, um, it wasn't until later in life that I sort of learned another lesson to make a change, right? So yeah, it's part of
Hmm.
the journey. It's part of the journey.
And how else have names kind of influenced your journey? Like, I'm thinking now you have a son, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Tell me a little bit about where his name came from, and
Sure.
the meaning there.
It was very easy for us to come up with female names. We had a large list of female names, and we didn't want to know what she was having, what we were having. So when my son was born, we had a very long list of agreed upon female names, girls' names, and then a very short list of male names that we agreed on. We couldn't agree on many. It was so difficult. But his name was on that short list of about three or four. And my wife liked the name, but I knew in Spanish it was plural, so it was a bit different, because rey means king and reyes means kings. So
Hmm.
we gave him a plural name. And then he actually has a Hebrew name too, so it's David. So his name is Reyes David, which means King David, but technically King's David. But yes, that's sort of his name.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And how
yeah.
do you hope that he lives into that name?
I want him to, I mean, the name is the name. At the end of the day, we don't, we don't necessarily live by our name per se, but how I like him to live in the world is to be an individual, but also a part of a family and a part of a community. So, do what's best for him and the people around him, of course. But I want him to explore the world. I want him to meet different people. I want him to see the world. I want him to experience different things, but also understand sort of his, we're all somewhat privileged in a sense compared to other people. So be humble in understanding that you are more privileged than some others, but also try to better the world somehow, whether it's charity, whether it's teaching, whether something. We all have to like figure a way to help people around us or people somewhere else in the world.
And I'm curious, when he gets a little older and you want to share more about your past,
Yes,
how do you think you're gonna navigate that? Just because your story has been so, I mean, we didn't talk about it in great detail here today, but
sure,
there have been a lot of twists and turns, to put it lightly.
sure.
How do you want to convey that part of yourself, the Juan, the Antonio, the Juan Antonio, all of that
Hmm.
to your son?
I'm a proud believer in not being what they call a bulldozer parent or a helicopter parent. Um, what I would like is for him to know who I am and where I came from. I'd also like to take him to places, whether it's where my wife's family and their family's from, where my family and they're from, but also Toronto. I want him to sort of know Toronto and the history of Toronto and Canada. Um, but at the end of the day, he's also an individual, so he's got to chart his own path. I can only give him the tools. So in terms of knowing about me, I'll tell him my stories. He can ask as many questions, and it's just being honest with him about what has happened and who I am.
Beautiful. Well, Antonio, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story today. I think there's actually a lot of reflecting to do about the power that names hold. I know in Judaism, there is the concept that the name that you give your child is something that they can kind of emulate in some ways, and it
Yeah.
does hold a lot of power. But I think that I just admire the way that you carry yourself and
Thank you.
hold your names, with pride and your history with pride. And I'm excited for more people to get to know the details of your story.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And that wraps up another episode of Tell Me a Story Season 2. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode or think you might have a story worth sharing, reach out. I'd love to hear from you.